Hi, I'm George, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be painting a self-portrait, and this is something I've done every year of my life since I was 23. And actually in a few days, on the 7th of August, I'm going to be 30, and I realised I haven't done a self-portrait as a 29-year-old. So I've came to my studio, it's quite late at night, it's about 11 PM, so I'm going to be painting into the night. And I'm going to be trying to paint a alla prima portrait with oil paint, so I'm aiming to get it all done tonight. So if you're watching this video on the 7th of August or after that, then I would have turned 30, so you can wish me a happy birthday. I'm going to be continuing my tradition of painting a yearly self-portrait, so please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and let's start painting. I'm painting on a gesso primed panel, which I primed using a mix of white gesso and black acrylic and a touch of raw umber acrylic paint, all mixed together to create this grey light mid-tone to paint on top of. I find it very helpful when painting portraits to work on a neutral mid-tone rather than the white of the canvas or a vibrant colour, as this neutral grey helps me see the colours accurately, as colours are relative, so they appear different when placed next to other colours, and the mid-tone helps prevent the first paint marks that I apply from looking too dark in value, which often happens when painting onto a white surface, as value, like colour, is also relative to what surrounds it. I start the painting by marking the position of my head on my panel using raw umber paint. It's very important to establish exactly where you want your head on your panel or your canvas, as you want to do this before you get into any details, as the last thing you want to do is to run out of space or perhaps have your head in a position which just doesn't work compositionally. So I first mark the top of my head and the bottom of my chin. I then sketch in this centre line, which is an imaginary line which runs vertically from my forehead between my eyes and down to my chin. This line helps capture the gesture of the head. When it comes to marking the features on the face, the first mark I make is for the brow line, and I make this as a straight line going across this centre line for the face, and this is known as the T structure. It's important to get the correct angle on this line, as this will correlate to the gesture of the head as well as the head's anatomical structure. I'm trying to draw with straight lines as much as possible at this stage, as these are easier to analyse than curved lines, and they also help me simplify the structure of the head and help prevent me from rushing in to small intricacies in the contour too quickly. Here I'm massing in the shape of my hair, the shadow on the side of my face in shadow, and my beard with thinned down raw umber paint. I find it easier to judge the shapes of different areas once they've been filled in, as I can compare them more accurately to the shapes that I see in nature, and at least for me I find it easier to see in terms of masses of tonal value rather than just linear marks, which is why I'm quite quick to fill in the shadow shapes without labouring over a really accurate underdrawing. Also, as I'm painting quite thinly, it's easier for me to paint on top of this cleanly with fresh paint. One thing to bear in mind when painting a portrait at a 3/4 angle like this is the side which is turning away will be a smaller distance from the centre line, whereas the side which is closer to us will be bigger, and also more of the side of the head will be visible. It's helpful to bear this in mind, as there is a general tendency when drawing or painting faces to try and square up the face, making it look more straight on, which is an unintentional error that people make that can make the face appear a bit distorted, with typically the section of the face which is turning away on the far side being painted as too big. I'm now tidying up the contours of my face using a tissue that I've dipped into my medium, which at the moment is about 90% Zestit, which is a citrus-based solvent, and 10% refined linseed oil. Once I'm happy with the placement of the shadow shapes, I'm now repainting these areas with a darker value, which is truer to the shadow's actual appearance in nature. To paint the shadow, the mix I'm using is raw umber, ivory black, and a touch of alizarin crimson. And for the lips, I'm just sketching them in using a colour mix of raw umber and alizarin crimson. For this portrait, I've decided to set up with a strong chiaroscuro lighting, like that frequently used by painters such as Rembrandt and Diego Velázquez. Chiaroscuro lighting creates a very dramatic contrast, which in turn helps create a striking and dramatic portrait, and normally lends itself best to masculine faces rather than women, where this light effect can be a little bit harsh, although there are plenty of examples where this chiaroscuro lighting does work well on female portraits as well, but it is generally considered to work best on male portraits. I'm placing the features on my face with broad brush marks, using my shadow mix to mark the dark shapes of the upper lip, my nostril and my eye. At this stage, I'm focusing on placing the proportions correctly rather than rendering any small details to an accurate rendition. So the word chiaroscuro means light and dark in Italian, but it is a very symbolic style of lighting with dark shadows and light lights, and with a significant contrast between the two. And in order to create this chiaroscuro lighting, you need one dominant light source lighting the figure from one direction, and the surrounding areas need to be dark, as the shadow colour and value is largely determined by the surrounding areas, which provide reflected light into the shadows. Here I'm applying a cool mid-tone to the face, using a colour mix of yellow ochre, cadmium red and permanent green and titanium white. I find having some warm green sections in the face will complement the warmer pinks and reds nicely. Even though painting a green colour mix onto the face can feel quite odd at first, you just need to trust the process, so trust me on this one. For this area of the forehead, I've made a slightly lighter colour mix, which is less green than that which I applied lower down on the face. I'm applying the paint using a flat brush, as I like the distinctive brush marks that it makes, and I want these to be visible throughout the painting, especially when the painting is viewed from a close distance. I've mixed big piles of each colour mix on my palette so I can apply the paint thickly and without thinning down the paint using my medium. This also allows me to keep going back to the colour mix throughout the duration of the painting without having to mix the colour mix all over again. Here I'm applying a warmer colour mix to the pinker areas of my face, which are my nose and my cheeks, and lower down in the middle of my forehead as well. I personally enjoy looking at paintings which are painterly in application, with areas of thick impasto paint, so I'm trying to take more of this approach with this painting. I've also chosen to paint this self-portrait on a panel rather than canvas, and this will help with that painterly appearance, as the brushstrokes will stand out clearly on the surface of the panel. Whereas often on canvas it can be a bit more absorbent and the thinner paint marks can get lost amongst the canvas texture. Another tip on getting a loose and painterly appearance to your art is to hold your paintbrush at the end furthest from the brush and paint at arm's length. This will help you paint the big shapes accurately without worrying about rendering the small details on the surface, as from this distance you can't really see those details.
Also, as I fill in this Rembrandt triangle on the shadow side of my face, I'm using a darker colour mix than I did for the cheek on the side of my face in light, even though it's not in shadow. But because it is further away from the light source, it is a bit darker than the side of my face which is in light. And although when we look at it, it may appear to be the same value, this is due to simultaneous contrast, which is an optical illusion that makes a light area surrounded by dark values appear lighter. And the same is true if a dark area is surrounded by light values, this dark area will appear even darker due to the contrast between it and the surrounding values. As I paint the lips, due to the angle of the lips, there's a significant shift in value between the upper lip, which is quite dark as it's facing down and away from the light, and the lower lip, which is facing up towards the light. The light is also lighting my face from the left-hand side, and the lips are sitting on a cylindrical structure of the maxilla and the mandible, so they get darker in the corners of the mouth, and as they go further away to the right, where they turn away from the light source, they get darker as well on that side. As I paint, I'm also holding back on applying the highlights, as I'm focusing on modelling the form of my face with the midtones and the light midtones first, and then I'll paint the highlights later on, as I want these to sit on top of the other flesh tones with thick, bold brushstrokes. I've now mixed the colour mix for the highlights, using mostly titanium white with a small touch of alizarin crimson and cobalt blue and a small touch of yellow ochre, to create a high value colour mix which is cooler in colour temperature than the other flesh tones, and I'm applying this with a loaded brush and a bold brush stroke. I'm now applying this paint mix for the highlights to a few other areas, here, the bridge of my nose, and now on the very end of my nose. When painting hair, it's important to think of the overall shape of the hair as a three-dimensional form, which will have an area of shadow and a halftone and a highlight, and not to get too distracted by the individual strands of hair, which are just small details that can be added on later. When painting eyebrows, you have to be very observant and careful in the placement of the eyebrow in relation to the distance between the eye and the eyebrow and the angle of the eyebrow as well, as these will say a lot about the expression on the face as well as the character of the face. especially in my instance where my eyebrows are quite dark. A slight change in angle can change the expression of my portrait, from perhaps looking angry to looking surprised, and the distance between the eyebrow and the eye will also change the expression. If the eyebrow is quite close to the eye, there's more of a stern expression, whereas if the eyebrow is higher up, it can perhaps look slightly surprised. And everybody has slight differences between the distance between their eye and the eyebrow, and this is something which is very characteristic to people's faces and therefore very helpful in getting an accurate likeness. One thing to observe is that the area with the most colour in my hair is the half-tone, sort of light mid-tone section between the shadow and the specular highlight, which are both more muted in chroma, with the specular highlight being a light golden grey sitting on top of the warm brown of this light mid-tone. Here I'm adding the specular highlight to my eye on the left. Adding these small highlights to the eyes is one of my favourite things about painting portraits, as just this small dab of light paint creates a big difference and it adds a sparkle and life to the eyes, which are an area of the face that as humans we're naturally most drawn to. When painting eyes, you want to bring the focus more to one eye than the other, as this will make a more clear focal point. And when we look into someone's eyes in life, we will actually only focus on one eye at a time. So to paint this effectively, you want to push the contrast in the eye, which is the focal point, by painting the specular highlight to be brighter and leaving the other eye to be not quite as sharp, with the highlight being a bit duller. So for this reason, I've painted the eye on the right with a duller specular highlight than the eye on the left, which is my focal point. In order to give impact to my face, I'm painting the background with a dark value, as my skin is quite light, so this dark background will help create a dramatic contrast between it and my face. To paint my t-shirt, I start by marking in the darkest areas of the areas in shadow before painting in the rest of my t-shirt. I chose to wear a top which is dark in value in order to draw more attention to my face, which contains the lightest areas of the painting. So I hope you enjoyed that video and found it helpful. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below. Also, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. And if you're feeling generous, you can give me a super thanks, which donates a little bit of money to the channel, which I'd be very grateful for. And you can also follow me on Instagram at George Frederick Thomas to keep up to date with my latest paintings. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.